and welcome to another edition of the Vic State Cricket Podcast. I'm Adam White, a very special edition of the Vic State Cricket Podcast. It's a Sheffield Shield Final edition after the Vics won their way through to the final after beating Western Australia this week. They're heading back again this week to take on WA at the Wacker from Thursday. So in this edition, we're going to be joined by Matt Short, the star of Victoria, particularly in the second half of the year, and also the coach, Chris Rogers. He'll join us for the first time this year to have a look at the final and how it is that we've got our way through to yet another Sheffield Shield final. But firstly, he's been starring, so we thought we'd get him back. Matt Short. Welcome, Matt.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
It feels appropriate. We sort of started the podcast this year with you, and now we go to almost finish it with you. Hopefully there's another edition next week when you win the final, but you've had a crazy season.
Yeah, it has been crazy. Very up and down, but as you said, it's the boys are flying at the moment, coming off, I think, 4 or 5 wins in a row now.
Five.
So, obviously really exciting times to be back in the final again this year, back in Perth. So, yeah, really looking forward to it.
It's a strange one because you did play in last year's final and then you're playing in this year's final, but it feels like, it's a bit of a different team, a different feel, incredible momentum, but it still is the same as last year. It's a bit of a strange one, the build-up.
Yeah, obviously WA being the top performers this year and, obviously deserved the home final over there. But, definitely a different feel. I think, especially after last week, coming off a win against them and to go back, off a win is different to last year. I know they tore us to shreds last year before the final, which probably dampened us a little bit, to be honest. But, definitely a different feeling this year, different team, a lot younger, probably less experienced. But, the momentum behind us and the excitement's, it's unreal at the moment.
What's it like in the dressing room? What's it like on the aeroplane coming back from a win in the hotel, on the nights between days play? I'd love to know that feeling that you've got at the moment, that spirit.
Yeah, it's definitely one I haven't quite felt before. It's hard to explain. I think, as I said, like the momentum and just coming off all these wins and such a young group, like you can feel the energy, from the young guys that are helping and performing well. So, we've obviously the young bowling group's definitely putting us in some good positions to win games, and nights in between days play. It's certainly exciting to have that feeling around the group, and know that the young guys are performing and just the energy that they bring. It's something I haven't felt before in my career. But certainly looking forward to this week and hopefully bring back a shield.
Do you feel that's the driving force with this 5-game winning sequence? The younger players and the energy and the positivity spirit that they bring? Because usually a dominant Shield team's the senior pros that have big years and the younger players sort of come along for the ride. But this is almost the opposite. Yeah,
I mean, it's kind of weird. Like, as you said, like you think a young team, hardly any experience, coming through with just, this year would be kind of expecting to be a bit lower in the table and just to get games under players' belts and, start the kind of rebuild, I guess, that people have been talking about. But I don't think anyone really expected, for us to do this well this year. And, credit to the squad and the coaching staff as well, just to band us all together and obviously get some good games under some young players' belts. And, they've shown they're able to step up and play at the level and win games. And I think the momentum thing we're talking about is definitely real, and it could be complete opposite. Like if we lose a couple of games, guys, especially that age that aren't too experienced, might sort of drop off a little bit or whatnot. But I think definitely winning games with such a young group, you can tell the energy's high in the change rooms, and certainly momentum's a big one.
I think that it's important for the listeners or the viewers of the podcast to get a bit of an insight into how the season sort of unfolded. Because often the talk of spirit and momentum, it's when you're winning. But I think it's important to talk about after that loss to Tassie, a close loss at the MCG, the spirit was very good then. The positivity, the camaraderie, you'd gone off some bad losses and some frustrating draws, but you could tell that the belief was there then before the winning sequence took place, if that makes sense. So it's to me that makes it feel real, that it's not just, we're a happy mob because we're winning.
Yeah, you're right. I think, and that might have something to do with the experience of the side and being so young. There wasn't too much expectation on us to do well. Obviously, we want to win, and that's a goal. But at the end of the day, we've lost a mountain of experience in, Jimmy Pattinson, Scotty Boland wasn't around, Peter Hanscom missed games, Nick Maddinson. So I think, the expectation obviously is to win games, but with such a young group, it was probably like, oh, look, we'll try and start the rebuild and get some games into some players. And to be honest, personally, I don't think I saw this year going the way it has. And a lot of guys have stood up, and you're right. In the start of the season was a bit frustrating, but the boys have done really well just to come back after Christmas, after the Big Bash, and get on this little winning streak.
Now, you talk about you didn't see it coming from a team perspective. What about yourself? I mean, I know you've spoken a lot over the last few weeks. You've almost been on Media Street. The interest in your story, because it is extraordinary. Out of the team there at one point in the Shield team, getting back in through a COVID situation where you played about 26 players against New South Wales, and then this amazing surge of form. Can you believe what you're doing?
Not really, no. To put it in a short answer, but it's been very up and down year. From going to be dropped, which was probably fair enough. I hadn't scored the runs or whatever that I needed to. Was probably out of form or didn't really have the confidence. But heading to Adelaide for the Big Bash was again good for me this year, and just to free myself up again and probably enjoy it a bit more. And I think coming back to the Vics after that was just do the same thing. Just go out and enjoy it, play your own game, put everything behind you. I think that's probably what I've struggled with the last few years is dwelling on what's happened in the past and, poor performances or, just thinking about the negatives, just that kind of cliche thing. And it's probably something I've got better at the last couple of years is just trying to put that aside and focus on what's ahead and just enjoy it, play my natural game. And I think that's really paid off.
Did you have a moment there before that New South Wales game when you were dropped as a leader? It doesn't happen very often. Where did you reach out to anybody? Did you just talk to yourself or talk to your parents, or is there a mentor to say, look, what am I doing here? What do I have to change? Or was it something you kind of worked out yourself?
I spoke to a couple of people. I think Petey was a big one. I always talked to him as sort of a bit of a mentor for me. Obviously, he's probably got a big part of the selection side of things. So it was good to sort of get his honest feedback, and I kind of agreed with everything. Like it was all self-explanatory. Like you need to do this, need to do that. I haven't been scoring the runs where I needed to, and stuff like that. So, and David Reed's another one who does a bit of work for the Stars, and he used to coach me at Northcote as well. So he's one I go to just sort of off field. He's not involved with the Vic, so it's nice to sort of get away and. His specialty is a psychologist, so I guess he's sort of helping me through the off-field things and sort of again like moving my thoughts from the negatives and just focusing on what I need to focus on, and it was more around the enjoyment and getting back to what I do naturally well. So it's rather thinking about all the negatives and in the past, what's all happened there. It's just knowing when to click and just going back to what you do best, and that's. Playing with freedom and playing positively, and it's definitely paying off.
So a century in the Big Bash started things off, an amazing run chase, and then the 50-over century, and then the Shield century. Is there anyone that stands out as something that you covet the most out of those three? Because you've always been a really important player in white ball cricket for Victoria. The Big Bash stuff, we don't worry about that so much because it's for the Adelaide Strikers. But then there's the Shield one. Is there one that stands out for you?
I think the Shield one, for sure. I've sort of put a bit of pressure on myself over the last few years especially, just to tick that first one off, which meant a lot. I've sort of been out in the 90s a few times. So that sort of came into mind a bit when I was going through the 90s. And just the relief that I felt afterwards was awesome. And to do it off the back of a couple of decent scores, the last couple of months, and just working on that consistency and helping the boys win some games has been huge as well.
I think the most impressive part from me is that as things have escalated, the attentions come upon you, as we talked before, at more media interviews, the love on social media and all those sorts of things. But you've kept it going. As the pressure of expectation has risen, you've risen with that expectation. I think that's particularly impressive, and that's quite difficult, I would imagine, as the expectation rises to keep that run going.
Yeah, it is. I mean, and that's probably what I'm working on now is that consistency. I've been in runs of form before and then dropped off. So I think, the most important thing now is I'm there. I know I can score runs. I know I can score hundreds. It's now focusing on, obviously the next game, but it's focusing on keeping my form up and, hoping that it doesn't drop again. So I know what the feeling is now and what the expectation is. It's just be nice to keep the consistency going and helping the boys out.
One last one on yourself. We've talked a bit about buckball over the last few weeks and the now famous conversation you had with Chris Rogers. I know you've worked with Dave Hussey as well. You're almost becoming the new breed of the Dave Hussey, the way that you're playing your cricket. How important have those two guys been on you through the journey, as I said, through this year, which has been this incredible roller coaster?
Yeah, they've been huge. I think, as soon as Buck took over, I think I was okay technically. It was probably more figuring out my game plan and what suited me best for the side and whether it was, higher in the order or lower or that kind of thing. But, I think this year we've definitely found that what works for me is going out and playing positively and, Baz ball or buck ball, whatever you want to call it. I think it's not to the extreme of the England team, but I think, there's a time and place to go hard or whatnot. But, it's almost like not worrying about defending or, a play and a miss or a nick and drop catch. It's, if the ball's there to be hit, I'm going after it again. So, again, as I said earlier, it's just putting everything aside from what's happened in the past and moving on to the next ball or whatever it be. So, Huss, it's pretty cool to be, you mentioned, to be playing similar to Huss. That's pretty cool. But, they've been huge in sort of freeing me up and sort of letting me play the way I want to play.
I promised I wouldn't ask another one about you, but I will. It's hard even talking to you that this is the same guy at the start of the year when we're starting the podcast and we were talking about the season and whatever else. And then with what you're achieving, is it almost like not an out-of-body experience, but you have to almost pinch yourself to think, this is you that we're talking about making these hundreds. This is you we're talking about why isn't he in the Australian team? This is the next white ball opener, all these sorts of things that we're talking about Matt Short. How does that feel?
I'm certainly not used to it.
Yeah.
I tell my girlfriend all the time, like, this doesn't normally happen. Like, it's like, I don't normally score these runs, but it's still sort of getting used to that. And, all the hype's been really cool, but, I guess just trying to get used to, I don't know, being spoken about or, being in selectors' minds and stuff like that. It's all really new to me. It's just sort of embracing it and taking it on and, while at the same time sort of not letting it get to you, still focusing on the game ahead. So, it's been really cool. But, again, a feeling that I want to keep going with and that consistency I'm talking about is, it's something I want to just keep focusing on and, hopefully stay in the minds of the selectors and all that kind of thing. So, stay in the limelight, I guess. But, it's been really good to be able to contribute and win games.
Now, we're going to speak to your coach, Chris Rogers, shortly for his insights into the players and into the final. So just one final one on the final. How different is it going to be this week? WA's team is going to be different. Paris was rested. You expect him to come back for the final. I'm not sure what they'll do with Morris, and there might be a couple of other changes to WA too. They didn't have anything to play for in the game that's just been played, so they had their own mental challenges going into last week's match. What are you thinking? How similar will it be, or how different is it going to be?
Might be a little bit different as batters. Our bowling lineup's probably going to be pretty similar. So I think we rattled their batters a little bit last week. We got through them pretty well and bowled to them really well. So I think we're pretty good in that sense. But obviously I think a lot of their bowls will be changing. It'll be a different challenge for us. Obviously, Joel, the lefty coming in, who bowls really well at the whacker most games. So, as I said earlier, coming off the win, I think the boys are up and about. I think the win we had over there last week will dampen them a little bit. So I definitely feel a lot more confident coming in this year than we did last year.
Well, it's great that you've come and had a chat. I know you're heading off on a plane tomorrow. I've enjoyed you being part of this podcast all year. Hopefully, you can be part of it next year. Hopefully, you're available to have us. It's happy for you to be with us throughout the course of the season. It's been a joy to watch you play. I know a lot of the people that listen to this podcast are just as excited as I am of how well you've gone, and hopefully, there's at least 1 or 2 more innings left in you before the end of this summer.
Thanks, Whitey. Appreciate it, mate.
Matt Short joining us on the Vic State Cricket Podcast. That's the player's perspective. The coach's perspective, Chris Rogers. He'll join us next.